review for solutions for solving systems equations with elimination, substitution, and graphing. So we're going to take a look at it in a slightly different way. Instead of just as a straight review, how to know which method to use. So let's start off with our goal today. So our goal is really to take a look at is, can I use and compare the different methods, and can I compare when to use them? So we're going to take some notes on that and kind of look through that. So first thing I want to look at is these two couple of equations. So we have three types of equations in your notes, system A, B, and C. So if you take a look at each one, we can only use each method once. So we can either graph once, substitute, or eliminate. So in this case, we've got two systems, but we have one system that is already solved for x or y. That already has this. That has a coefficient of 1. That's going to lead me to think that substitution is the best method. So we'll talk more about why we choose this in a minute. But if we were to solve this for substitution, the first thing I have to do is solve for x or y. Okay? So now that I've got that, I can say, okay, I'm going to solve my top equation for x or y. So I'm going to choose to solve it for x. So x minus y equals -2. So now that I have that, I want to solve for x, so I'm going to add y to both sides. Now you could solve it for y or x, it doesn't matter, but mine just requires one step. If I solved it for y, I'd have one more step to take. So now I get x equals y minus 2. So now that I have that, I can go ahead and go. Now that I have a version I can substitute, I'm going to substitute x minus 2 in or y minus 2 into x on the previous other equation. So 7 times y minus 2 plus 2y equals -5. So now I'm going to solve for y. Start by distributing. So 7y minus 14 plus 2y equals -5. Combine my two like terms. So I have 9y minus 14 equals -5. Add 14 to both sides to isolate the y variable. Give me 9y is equal to 9. Give me y is equal to 1. Now that I have that first half of the answer, the second half, I'm going to plug it back into this equation right here. So x equals 1 minus 2. Well, x will now equal -1. So my answer is -1, 1. Now, let's take a second and talk about why I chose that equation. Why I chose to do x minus y equals -2 and solve for substitution. So there's two reasons. One is I have a coefficient of 1 for a variable, for my x or y variable. That allows me to easily solve for x or y. The other reason is when I look at them, if I solve these for y, this other problem for y, if I take a look at 7x plus 2y equals, let's just make sure I've got the right equation, plus 2y equals -5. If I look at that equation, if I try to solve this to graph as the other option, it's going to take longer to do the math. If I would solve this for y, I'd add 7x or subtract 7x from both sides, and I get 2y equals -7x minus 5, and divide everything by 2. I'm going to end up with y equals -7 over 2x minus 5/2. And that's a little more challenging to graph. So having a fractional, the other reason is if I have a fractional y-intercept, I want to choose substitution or elimination. Okay, now let's take a look at the next problem. Now taking a look at this one, I want you to take a guess. Which one would you choose? Well, we've already used substitution, so we can't use that again. Do I want to solve this with graphing, or do I want to solve it with elimination? I hope you picked elimination, because it comes back to the exact same thing we were talking about just on the last page. if I was to solve, say, even this first equation for slope-intercept form, I have 8x plus 5y equals negative 13. Well, if I subtract 8x, I get 5y equals negative 8x minus 13. And then I divide everything by 5. I get y equals negative 8/5 x minus 13 over 5. Graphing that would be very challenging. So I don't want to choose graphing. So let's choose substitution or elimination. So let's go in and take a look. We want to find out what is our lowest common multiple. So here my lowest common multiple of 8 and 3 is 24. My lowest common multiple of 5 and 4 is 20. So I want to solve for 20. So I'm going to multiply each one. To turn 5 into 20, I got to multiply by 4. And to turn 4 into 20, I have to multiply by 5. Now, the next step is, if I look at my signs, are they opposite? And they're not. So I'm going to go ahead and make one of my numbers I'm going to multiply by negative. So I have that equal but opposite pair. So 8x times 4 is 32x plus 20y equals negative 52. And then if I do the next one, I get negative 15x minus 20y equals negative 50. Now I add those both together because I have opposite signs. 17x is equal to 100 and negative 102. If I do the division on my calculator, I get x equals negative 6. So now I've got my x term. So now I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and plug the x term back into one of the three operations in the equations. I'm going to choose this last term just because it's the smallest numbers. So 3 times negative 6 plus 4y equals 10. So negative 18 plus 4y equals 10. Add 18 to both sides. I get 4y equals 28, and y then equals 7. So I've got my second answer of negative 6, 7. Now the last one, I already talked about y. The last one, well, I'm down to my last method. I know what I'm left with. I've already used substitution. I've already used elimination. So I'm down to graphing. That's going to be my last method. But why do we choose graphing? If I take and solve and I divide c, this c term right here, ax plus by equals c, there's a relationship I can find. If I divide c by b, I'm always going to find the y-intercept. Okay? So by finding that, this one, 18 divided by negative 3 is negative 6, and 4 divided by 1 is 4. Since these are both integers, I'm going to go ahead and solve this with graphing. Okay? So the first thing I need to do when I do graphing is put it into slope-intercept form. Okay? Solve for slope-intercept. For y equals mx plus b. So, first problem, 4x minus 3y equals 18. Subtract 4x from both sides. I end up with negative 3y equals negative 4x plus 18. Divide everything by negative 3. So I get y equals 4/3 x minus 6. And do the same thing with this problem. 2x plus y equals 4 minus 2x from both sides. I'm left with y equals negative 2x plus 4. Now, I went ahead and hit a graph at the very bottom of my screen, so I'm going to bring that up so I can take a look at it and show you. So let's go ahead and graph this first equation in purple. So we start at negative 6. There's numbers negative 6. Then we go up 4 to the right 3. Up 4 more to the right 3. Up 4 more to the right 3. And then we're going to do the same thing but opposite. Down 4 to the left 3. So there's my first 3. Grab the second one in this nice orange color. starting at positive 4 this time, down 2 to the right 1, down 2 more to the right 1, and then finding my pair right here. Moving down and solving each one, graphing that all the way out. I see that my intersection is right here at positive 3, negative 2. Hopefully that was a good review for you and helps you understand when to choose which type of method. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments or send me an email.